Good evening, children. I'm here with the fourth video of chapter 1, Basic Concepts of Macroeconomics. Today we are going to cover the different definitions. Number 1, domestic territory. Number 2, normal resident. And number 3, net factor income from abroad. First of all, domestic territory or economic territory of a country. We have heard about political territory. Like when we think about India, we think about the map of India. That is a political territory. So is this also the domestic territory of a country? No. Domestic territory is much bigger than the political territory. How? Because domestic territory is a geographical territory within which persons, goods and capital circulate freely. It includes political boundary such as territorial waters and airspace, embassies, consulates, military bases, etc. located abroad, ships and aircrafts owned and operated by normal residents between two or more nations, and fishing vessels, oil and natural gas rigs operated by normal residents in international waters. One by one. Let us first see what is a political boundary. Political boundary means, like I told you, when we imagine India, we imagine the map of India. So all the land that lies within the political territory, the waters, the rivers and the airspace. Now one thing, airspace is something you might not be knowing of. We have heard of this word airspace when there are times there is tension between India and Pakistan. So you must have heard in the news that India has closed its airspace for Pakistan and vice versa. What does this airspace mean? Like we have land to move on, like we have water in which ships move. The same way in the air also, a particular boundary in the air is there for different countries. So India has its airspace in which it can allow other airplanes of other countries to operate and cannot allow. Same is the condition with Pakistan or any other country of the world. So the territory in the air that India owns, that is known as the airspace. The same way, at times when we talk about political boundary, and then again we are talking about territorial waters. Okay, so territorial waters means the rivers, the seas, all those things that are included in the political boundary of our country. Now next we come to embassies, consulates, military bases, etc. located abroad. Embassies, number one. Embassy is where our ambassador has his office. Who is an ambassador? Any person who secures the rights of Indians in any other country of the world is a representative of our country in other countries and is known as an ambassador. His office is known as an embassy. So in India, we will not have Indian embassy because we already have Indian government to look after our rights. But in Australia or America, we will have an Indian embassy. So that embassy is a part of our domestic territory even though it does not lie in our political boundary. The same goes for consulates and military bases. Okay. Now next we come to ships and aircrafts owned and operated by normal residents between two or more countries. Like we spoke about airspace. The same way, India has certain nautical miles in the ocean which belong to India. That is India's water boundary. In that water boundary, its ships and all the like aircrafts in the airspace and ships in the water boundary can operate and they will be part of the Indian domestic territory. Like you must have heard of many a times that our fishermen were caught in, let's say, Sri Lanka, or Sri Lankan fishermen were caught by Indian government. It is because nautical miles, otherwise it is geographically defined, but fishermen do not come to know when they have crossed that boundary. So at times, due to no fault of theirs, they are caught by the other government when they have crossed that boundary. But if they are operating within that boundary, that is part of the domestic territory of our country. Fishing vessels, oil and natural rigs. Fishing vessels, I don't need to tell you again. Fishing vessels you're all familiar with. Oil and natural gas rigs. One example is Bombay High. You have heard about Bombay. Everybody knows. Today it is known as Mumbai. Okay. So just very close to the coast where Mumbai lies is an oil and natural gas rig known as Bombay High. So even though it is there in the ocean, it belongs to India because it is in the water boundary of India. Okay, so all these four things put together form the domestic territory or economic territory of a country. Now, why is it important for us to know what forms a part of our domestic territory? It is simply because all the income that is being earned in the domestic territory of a country is known as domestic income. Okay, the income earned in the domestic territory of a country is known as domestic income. So in order to arrive at domestic income, we ought to know, we should be knowing where it is earned. It may be earned in the political boundary or in any of the three points mentioned above, B, C and D. It will still be a part of domestic income. So the income earned from A, B, C and D is equal to domestic income. Okay, the next thing that we are going to cover is normal resident of a country. First of all, let's take up the definition. Normal resident is a person or institution who ordinarily resides for 1 year or more in a country and whose center of economic interest lies in that country. Now, one by one. Normal resident ordinarily resides in a country. For example, let's say normal residents can be nationals of a country, Indians living in India, because Indians normally or ordinarily reside in our country. Okay? And secondly, whose center of economic interest lies in that country. What is center of economic interest? Let us see. Earning, spending and accumulation of wealth. Anybody who is staying in India, कोई इंडिया में रह रहा है लेकिन कमाने के लिए कहीं बाहर जा रहा है, खर्च करता है वो बाहर, अपनी प्रॉपर्टी बाहर वो बना रहा है, तो उसका सेंटर ऑफ इकोनॉमिक इंटरेस्ट हमारी कंट्री में लाए नहीं कर रहा. दैट मीन्स दीज टू कंडीशंस हैव टू बी फुलफिल्ड. नंबर वन, वो 1 साल या उससे ज़्यादा इंडिया में रहे और उसका इकोनॉमिक इंटरेस्ट भी इंडिया में रहे, तब वो इंडिया का नॉर्मल रेजिडेंट कहलाएगा. ये 2 कंडीशंस फुलफिल करने पर. ओके. Now, all citizens are not necessarily normal residents and vice versa. ये लाइन बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है बिकॉज पहली बार जब आप नॉर्मल रेजिडेंट पढ़ते हैं और आप देखते हैं कोई 1 साल या उससे ज़्यादा रहे इंडिया में तो नॉर्मल रेजिडेंट है. सो एक कन्फ्यूजन आता है दिमाग में कि क्या इंडिया का हर सिटीजन नॉर्मल रेजिडेंट है. ध्यान रखिए कि किसी भी सिटीजन को नॉर्मल रेजिडेंट होने के लिए क्या कंडीशन फुलफिल करनी है. अगर कोई इंडियन सिटीजन है तो उसको कौन सी कंडीशन फुलफिल करनी है. नंबर 1, ही शुड लिव इनसाइड इंडिया ऑर्डिनरीली, और नंबर 2, इफ ही स्टेज अब्रॉड दैट स्टे शुड बी लेस देन 1 ईयर. यानी अगर एक इंडियन सिटीजन है उसको रेजिडेंट होने के लिए या तो वो साल भर इंडिया में रहे तो वो रेजिडेंट भी है और सिटीजन भी है, लेकिन अगर वो इंडिया से बाहर जाता है तो वो साल भर तक बाहर ना रहे, साल भर से कम अगर वो बाहर रहता है तो भी वो इंडियन सिटीजन भी रहेगा और रेजिडेंट भी रहेगा. ऑन द अदर हैंड, फॉरेनर एक फॉरेन सिटीजन है लेकिन इंडिया का रेजिडेंट हो सकता है. शर्त क्या है कि वो हमारी कंट्री में 1 साल या उससे ज़्यादा रहे. तो यानी जिस साल वो हमारी कंट्री में रह रहा है वो यहाँ का सिटीजन नहीं बनेगा लेकिन यहाँ का रेजिडेंट कहलाएगा ओनली फॉर दैट ईयर, जिस साल वो पूरे 1 साल या उससे ज़्यादा इंडिया में रहता है. ओके. तो नॉर्मल रेजिडेंट एक इंडियन हो सकता है जो पूरे साल इंडिया रहा, या एक इंडियन जो कि ज़्यादातर इंडिया रहा और कुछ महीनों के लिए बाहर रहा, या फिर एक फॉरेनर जो कि पूरे साल इंडिया रहा. इन तीनों के अलावा कोई नॉर्मल रेजिडेंट इंडिया का नहीं हो सकता. नाउ, why is this thing normal residence important in macro economics? जैसे हमने कहा डोमेस्टिक टेरिटरी जानना इसलिए ज़रूरी था क्योंकि जितनी भी इनकम डोमेस्टिक टेरिटरी में अर्न हो रही है वो डोमेस्टिक इनकम कहलाएगी। ऐसे ही जितनी भी इनकम नॉर्मल रेजिडेंट अर्न कर रहा है वो नेशनल इनकम कहलाएगी। इसका मतलब क्या है कि नेशनल इनकम सिर्फ नॉर्मल रेजिडेंट्स की इनकम है, चाहे वो इंडिया में रह के अर्न करें चाहे इंडिया के बाहर रह के अर्न करें। ओके, सो अनलेस एंड अनटिल अ पर्सन इज अ नॉर्मल रेजिडेंट उसकी इनकम नेशनल इनकम में नहीं आएगी। ओके, नाउ बिफोर आई गो फर्दर, इन दोनों का डिफरेंस समझने के लिए एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट चीज़, तीसरी चीज़ जो हमें जाननी है वो है नेट फैक्टर इनकम फ्रॉम अब्रॉड। शॉर्ट में इसको हम कहते हैं NFIFA और NFIA। नॉर्मली हम इसको NFIA ही कहते हैं। NFIA है क्या? इट इज़ द डिफरेंस बिटवीन फैक्टर इनकम रिसीव्ड फ्रॉम अब्रॉड एंड फैक्टर इनकम पेड टू अब्रॉड। ओके, before I go any further, let me explain what factor income is. We are having 4 factors of production. Number 1, land. Number 2, labor. Number 3, capital. And number 4, enterprise. इनको हम शॉर्ट में सेल कहते हैं। C stands for capital, E stands for enterprise, L stands for land and another L stands for labor. तो जैसे सेल के बिना हमारी बॉडी अधूरी है, ऐसे ही फैक्टर्स ऑफ प्रोडक्शन के बिना, लैंड, लेबर, कैपिटल, एंटरप्राइज के बिना प्रोडक्शन पॉसिबल नहीं है। अब ये जो फैक्टर्स ऑफ प्रोडक्शन हैं ये इंडिया के अंदर रह के भी काम कर सकते हैं या ये फैक्टर्स इंडिया के बाहर जाके भी काम कर सकते हैं। काम से सेम प्रोडक्शन का काम। ओके, नाउ व्हेन दीज फैक्टर्स मूव आउट ऑफ द कंट्री देन व्हाट हैपेंस? देखिए, अगेन कमिंग बैक, NFIA is the difference between factor income from abroad. Factor income from abroad means जो इनकम फैक्टर्स को मिली। फैक्टर्स को इनकम क्यों मिलती है? अगर लेबर ने काम किया तो हम उसको वेजेस देते हैं, तो ये फैक्टर की इनकम कहलाएगी। यानी चारों फैक्टर्स को जो उनके काम के बदले में मिलता है दैट इज नोन एज फैक्टर इनकम। तो जब हमारे फैक्टर्स बाहर जाते हैं दे गेट फैक्टर इनकम फ्रॉम अब्रॉड, शॉर्ट में फीफा। ऐसे ही बाहर के फैक्टर्स हमारे यहाँ आते हैं तो हमें भी उनके काम के बदले उन्हें पेमेंट करना होता है। सो फैक्टर इनकम फ्रॉम अब्रॉड माइनस फैक्टर इनकम टू अब्रॉड इज नोन एज NFIA। ओके, इसमें मेन चीज याद रखने की ये है कि हम फ्रॉम में से टू को माइनस कर रहे हैं। ऐसा क्यों कर रहे हैं हम? क्योंकि हमारे रेजिडेंट्स जो बाहर अर्न करते हैं उसे हमें ऐड करना है और बाहर के रेजिडेंट्स जो यहाँ अर्न करते हैं उसे हमें माइनस करना है। ओके, तो इन दोनों का कंबाइंड इफेक्ट कहलाता है NFIA। नाउ NFIA इज द डिफरेंस बिटवीन डोमेस्टिक इनकम एंड नेशनल इनकम, विच मीन्स कि डोमेस्टिक इनकम में हम NFIA ऐड करें तो हमें नेशनल इनकम मिलती है, या हम कह सकते हैं नेशनल इनकम में से हम NFIA को माइनस करें तो डोमेस्टिक इनकम मिलती है। ओके, सो NFIA is the difference between domestic income and national income. Why so? Because जितना हमारी कंट्री में रह के हमने अर्न किया वो तो डोमेस्टिक इनकम है, लेकिन हम अपनी कंट्री से बाहर भी जा रहे हैं और हम नॉर्मल रेजिडेंट हैं तो हमारी इनकम नेशनल इनकम में जुड़नी चाहिए। दैट मीन्स फीफा हैज टू बी एडेड। ओके, तो NFIA का जो फर्स्ट पार्ट है फीफा इसलिए ऐड होता है डोमेस्टिक इनकम में। ठीक है, सेम वे जब डोमेस्टिक टेरिटरी के अंदर कोई इनकम अर्न की गई तो हो सकता है किसी फॉरेनर ने अर्न की हो, वो उसको हमें निकालना है नेशनल इनकम कैलकुलेट करने से पहले। क्यों? क्योंकि वो हमारी कंट्री का रेजिडेंट नहीं है। दैट इज वाई वी नीड टू माइनस फैक्टर इनकम पेड टू अब्रॉड। ओके, नाउ अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट व्हेन द क्वेश्चन कम्स which income is a part of domestic income, you have to remember, just ask yourself only one question: where is this income earned? Where? If the answer is domestic territory, then that income is domestic income. Okay, Secondly, if you are asked whether an income is to be included in national income or not, one question you're going to ask yourself, by whom? If the answer is that the income has been earned by the normal resident, then it is included in national income. And if the answer is no, then it will not be included in national income. For your clarity, let me take up these things once more. For domestic income, it is necessary, it is earned in the domestic territory. So you have to ask yourself, where is the income earned? And if the answer is, it is earned in the domestic territory, then it ought to be domestic income. And in order to be national income, it needs to be earned by the normal resident. So your question should be, by whom has this income been earned? Okay, so if it is by the normal resident, then it is national income and vice versa. Now, coming to the last part of the video, components of NFIA. The NFIA that we were speaking about, the difference between factor income from abroad and to abroad, is divided into three parts. It has three parts or three components. Number one, net compensation of employees. Always remember, children, the word net always involves some calculation, plus or minus. Net is never one value. It will always come as a plus or minus. So net compensation of employees. This word compensation of employees will be taking up in later chapters. For a common reference, let me tell you, compensation of employees is a common word for wages and salaries. I hope you know what are wages and salaries. The payment made to labor for their physical and mental work is known as wages and salaries. Okay, so net compensation of employees means wages and salaries received by residents from abroad minus wages and salaries paid to non-residents in our country. So when our people work abroad and they get wages in exchange of their services, that has to be added, and those foreigners who are working in our country, when we pay them wages, that has to be deducted, and hence we come to net compensation of employees. The next thing, net income from property and entrepreneurship. Income from property and entrepreneurship means rent, royalty, interest and profit. I have mentioned in the bracket dividend and corporate tax. Okay. Rent, royalty, interest and profit received from abroad minus rent, royalty, interest and profit paid to abroad. These incomes, when our residents are earning from abroad, we add them, and when non-residents are earning in our country, we deduct them, and we get net income from property and entrepreneurship. I want particularly to mention one thing over here, that there is a reference point number 1. As you can see, I have given 3 parts of profit. Okay, because only 2 parts of profit will be taken in B and the remaining third part will be taken in C. As you can see, profit has 3 parts, the first being dividend. When profit is being earned by any company, nowadays all the companies are having shareholders. Okay, then the part of the profit that the company has to give to the shareholders is known as dividend. So one part of the profit is given to the shareholders, known as dividend. The second part of profit, corporate or profit tax as it is known, it is given to the government. Only the third and the remaining part of the profit is kept by the firm or the company itself in order to meet future losses or in order to carry on its operational activities. So profit, as we have heard, the total profit does not go to the firm owner or the company. Okay, only a part of it goes to the firm or the company, which is known as undistributed profit or retained earning. Now, these first two parts of the profit, they form the part of net income from property and entrepreneurship. So in this case, profit only includes dividend and corporate tax. The third part, which is retained earnings, it is the C part of NFIA. Net retained earnings, meaning retained earnings or undistributed profit from abroad minus retained earnings or undistributed profit paid to abroad. Okay, so when we add A, B and C, we get NFIA. So far we have two formulas of NFIA. One is FIFA minus FITA, the one that I have mentioned in the bracket, and the third is A plus B plus C, net compensation of employees plus net income from property and entrepreneurship plus net retained earnings is equal to NFIA. Okay, and again I'm just mentioning that NFIA is the difference between domestic income and national income. Now, lastly, a very short mention over here that when we are talking about an economy, I just mentioned to you the word firm. Okay, so let me mention the other sectors of the economy as well. Major sectors of an economy include number one, household, जिसको हम normally family कहते हैं, लेकिन economics की language में हम उसको household कहते हैं. तो इनका मेन काम क्या है? That they are consumers. They are the main consumers. And why are they important? Because they are the owners of factors. If I am a household, तो I am the owner of land, labor, capital and enterprise. Okay? तो कोई भी production work बिना factors के नहीं हो सकता, और factor owners कौन है? Households. ठीक है? Firm हम जब कहते हैं, they are producers. It can be a private firm, जैसे कि टाटास, बिरलास, इनकी फर्म्स प्राइवेट फर्म्स कहलाती हैं. और जो फर्म्स गवर्नमेंट के अंडर में है और यानी प्रोडक्शन का काम कर रही हैं लेकिन गवर्नमेंट के अंडर में है, उनको हम गवर्नमेंट फर्म्स या गवर्नमेंट एंटरप्राइजेस कहते हैं. द थर्ड सेक्टर ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट इज द इकोनॉमी इज गवर्नमेंट. गवर्नमेंट दो तरह से ऑपरेट करती है इकोनॉमी में. आप लोग जानते हैं दैट गवर्नमेंट मेक्स मोस्ट ऑफ द लॉज. गवर्नमेंट ज़्यादातर जितने भी काम हैं, जो लॉज को इम्प्लीमेंट करने के भी काम हैं, एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन के जो काम है, वो सब गवर्नमेंट करती है. तो गवर्नमेंट का वो हिस्सा जो कि एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव वर्क करता है, जैसे डिफेंस, रेलवेज, उसको हम कहते हैं जनरल गवर्नमेंट. और गवर्नमेंट का वो हिस्सा जो कि गुड्स और सर्विसेज को प्रोड्यूस करता है प्राइवेट सेक्टर की ही तरह, जैसे LIC हो गया. ओके, तो उसको हम कहते हैं गवर्नमेंट एंटरप्राइजेस. ओके, नाउ fourth sector of the economy is rest of the world sector, which means the countries beyond your own country. आज की डेट में कोई भी कंट्री या कोई भी इकोनॉमी अकेले सर्वाइव नहीं कर सकती. वी आर एन ओपन इकोनॉमी, विच मीन्स हमारा अपना हाउस होल्ड, फर्म और गवर्नमेंट अधूरे हैं अनलेस एंड अनटिल हम इंपोर्ट या एक्सपोर्ट ना करें गुड्स का, सर्विसेज का, या कैपिटल हमारी कंट्री में आए या जाए नहीं. सो वी डू नीड द रेस्ट ऑफ द वर्ल्ड सेक्टर और द एक्सटर्नल सेक्टर. So this way we are having 4 sectors of the economy. That's all for today. Thank you.